Hello, this is Sunday Bible Chat for the 6th Sunday in Ordinary Time, which happens to be February 17th. And so my theme today is love, perhaps because Valentine's Day is this week, but also because of our readings on the Beatitudes, which focus on the kingdom of God. And so you might wonder, well, what does the kingdom of God have to do with the theme of love or Valentine's Day? Well, I really can't make the connection with Valentine's Day, but I can with love. And so when Jesus talks about the kingdom of God, his disciples assume it's going to be some earthly kingdom, and that's what they're looking forward to. James and John want to sit on Jesus' right hand and left hand when he comes into his kingdom. There's an assumption it's going to be material kind of reality, and certainly a place of that's much safer and much more beneficial to live in than the present reality. And then we think about present tense Christians, and so many of us seem to think that the kingdom of God is the afterlife, the kingdom of heaven. But I believe that Jesus had a different intention, that when he referred to the kingdom of God, he was actually looking at the actualization of love. And a clue for this is the Lord's Prayer. There are two lines in there which are very, very closely related. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. And so, here's the coming of the kingdom, and it's somehow related to God's will. So it's God's will that the kingdom comes, but what is this will, and what does it mean for the kingdom to come? The only thing that makes sense to me is that the actualization of God's will is that love becomes actualized in creation. That each of us is made of love, by love, and for love, and therefore all creation needs to return to its purpose, to fulfill the divine intention. And so when I think about the kingdom of God being accessible in the here and now, it's really the reign of love, or the actualization of God's will, which is that love spreads throughout the earth, unifying us rather than allowing us to be divided. So the reign of God then has to do with the interconnectedness of all people, and I believe all created matter as well. It's especially our four-legged friends and our two-legged friends and our winged friends and our friends that live in the depths of the waters, that somehow we're all interconnected as different species, all of us manifestations of God's will, of God's love. And if we fulfilled our destiny, then creation would go back to its Edenic state, you might say, of perfection. But there is free choice involved, so we're all free to love or not love, as the case may be. It would be worth imagining, what would the world be like if we actually learned how to love as Jesus loved us? Well, first of all, our social problems would disappear. Secondly, crime and violence of all kinds, warfare, all the horrendous human tragedies that afflict peoples everywhere, whether warfare, starvation, immigration issues. Again, I've mentioned before the situation at our borders being an absolute humanitarian crisis. But if we learnt to love, we wouldn't have these problems. If we learnt to love, the world would be a happy place. If we learnt to love, then the whole of creation would be transformed, and we would be living in a new creation, the kind of creation that Jesus intended for us. But what blocks us from loving is the ego. So the ego has certain needs. The ego needs to be fed with addictions. The ego needs to be fed with power. The ego needs to be fed with control. The ego needs to be fed with flattery. And so then this ego self, the false self I should say, when I use the word ego, I'm not using it in the sense of building a healthy ego in a psychological sense. I'm actually using the word ego to mean the false self. So this false self of ours needs to be fed by our baser instincts. And the more we feed it with consumerism, for example, the more we feed it with cruelty or selfishness or narcissism, the bigger this false self grows and the less room there is for loving. The antidote for this ego-driven self is love. And love springs from the depths of the soul, and it represents our best instincts rather than our worst instincts. Love is what defeats ego, or the false self. And for this love to thrive, we must love ourselves, as well as our neighbours, and as well as God. And this love is not something we just articulate in words, but it's something we live. And the more we extend ourselves to others, the more we take care of ourselves and the more attention we pay to God, then the greater the actualization of love. I believe human destiny is for each of us to become love. Just as God is love, so I believe each of us is called to be love as well. Not only to be loving, but to be love itself, which means transcending limitations of ego and instead claiming all the attributes of soul or spirit. All this is a little bit complicated, but basically then, the kingdom of God is not a place, I believe it's a state of heart, not even a state of mind, yes, a state of heart in which we can live if we can only leave aside our baser instincts and move towards one another in love. So this is probably enough said for today. I wish you all a happy St. Valentine's Day. May there be plenty of love in your lives. May you not only receive it, but also give it, and most especially, may you actualize it. So until the following Sunday, this is Sunday Chat checking out.